The cold wind swept through the alley, carrying with it the faint scent of garbage and despair. Maya huddled under a tattered blanket behind the dumpster, her small frame trembling as the icy November night pressed against her skin. She was 11 years old, but life had forced her to grow up far too quickly. Her stomach growled, a familiar companion that gnawed at her insides, reminding her she hadn't eaten since yesterday. In her hand, she clutched a notebook, its edges frayed and stained. It was the only possession she truly cared about. Each page was filled with her dreams, her sketches of inventions that might never exist, and ideas she didn't know if anyone would ever care about. Maya glanced up as the distant rumble of a car engine grew louder. Her instinct was to shrink further into the shadows. People on the streets didn't stop for kids like her. They either looked through her as if she were invisible or stared with suspicion, ready to call the cops if she lingered too long. Tonight, though, the car didn't pass by. It stopped. The sleek, black Tesla parked just a few feet away from her hiding spot, and a tall figure stepped out. The man looked out of place in his tailored coat and clean-cut appearance. His eyes scanned the alley, but not with disgust or indifference. There was something else. Curiosity, maybe even concern. Maya tightened her grip on the blanket, her heart pounding. She didn't trust men in suits. They were the ones who made promises they didn't keep, who walked away when the cameras stopped rolling. "Hey," the man called out, his voice calm but carrying a weight of authority. "Are you okay?" She didn't respond, her eyes darting to the exit of the alley. Run or stay? Her body tensed, ready to flee, but something about his tone made her pause. "I'm not here to bother you," he said, holding up his hands. You look cold and hungry." Maya's stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. Embarrassed, she pulled the blanket tighter around her. "I don't need anything," she mumbled. The man crouched down to her level, still keeping a respectful distance. "Everyone needs something," he said softly. "Even me." She frowned, her curiosity piqued despite herself. "Who are you?" "Elon," he said simply. "Elon Musk." The name meant nothing to her. She squinted at him, trying to decide if he was crazy or just another well-meaning stranger who'd leave as soon as he realized she wasn't a charity case. "I don't care who you are," she said bluntly, her voice sharp with the edge she used to protect herself. "I'm fine. Go help someone else." Instead of walking away, Elon smiled. Not a pitying smile, but one of genuine amusement. "Fair enough," he said, standing up, "but I don't think you're fine. And I don't think you think you're fine either." Maya didn't answer. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a protein bar, tossing it gently onto the ground near her. "In case you change your mind," he said, stepping back toward his car. As the door closed and the car pulled away, Maya stared at the protein bar, her stomach twisting. She didn't know why, but something about the man's words lingered. Tomorrow would come with more questions than answers, and Maya had no idea how much her life was about to change. What would you do if a stranger offered you kindness when you least expected it? Would you take the risk, or keep the walls around you high? Where are you watching from? Please publicly comment your opinion to let us know. Please like and subscribe to the channel. The protein bar sat untouched on the damp ground. Maya eyed it warily, her stomach growling louder with each passing minute. She'd learned the hard way not to trust anything, or anyone, too easily. For all she knew, it could be a trick. But as the cold settled deeper into her bones and the hunger became unbearable, she snatched it up, tearing open the wrapper with shaky fingers. The first bite was heavenly. Her body screamed for nourishment, and she devoured it in seconds, barely tasting it. When it was gone, a pang of guilt crept in. Was this how it always went? A moment of relief followed by the crushing reality that nothing had changed. Morning came too quickly, with sunlight cutting through the smoggy sky. Maya pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders as she shuffled out of the alley. The streets of downtown Los Angeles were already bustling with life, people rushing past without a second glance. She blended in with the background noise, just another invisible child trying to survive. But something was different. Parked across the street was the same sleek black Tesla from the night before. Maya froze. The man, Elon, was standing by the car, his phone in one hand and a coffee in the other. She watched him for a moment, trying to figure out why he'd come back. Was it pity? Curiosity? Before she could decide, he looked up and spotted her. To her surprise, he smiled and waved. Maya's first instinct was to run, but something held her in place. Maybe it was the way he didn't look at her like she was a problem to be solved or a statistic to pity. Instead, his gaze carried something unfamiliar. Respect? You again, she said cautiously as she crossed the street. You remembered me, he replied with a grin. She shrugged. Kind of hard to forget someone who parks a car like that in this part of town. Elon chuckled, taking a sip of his coffee. Fair point. I wanted to check on you. See if you needed anything. Maya narrowed her eyes. Why? You don't even know me. True, he admitted. But I don't think anyone should have to go through life alone. And you remind me of someone I used to know. His words caught her off guard. Who? He hesitated, his smile faltering just a little. Someone who was a lot like you. Smart, stubborn, and stronger than they realized. Maya felt a flicker of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Curiosity. What happened to them? They didn't give up, he said simply. For a moment, Maya didn't know how to respond. She'd heard plenty of empty words from people who claimed to care, but something about the way he said it made her believe he meant it. Look, Elon continued. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a folded piece of paper and handed it to her. If you ever want to talk, or if you need anything, call me. My number's on there. Maya took the paper reluctantly, tucking it into her pocket without looking at it. I don't have a phone, she muttered. Then I'll make sure you do, he said, his tone serious. When you're ready, reach out. Before she could argue, he opened the car door and slid inside. The Tesla hummed to life, pulling away from the curb. Maya stood there, her mind racing. Why would someone like him care about someone like her? The question gnawed at her as she unfolded the paper. In neat handwriting it read, Elon Musk. Below is a series of phone numbers. And underneath, a short message, you're not alone. For the first time in years, Maya felt a flicker of something she couldn't quite name. Hope. Would you take a chance on someone offering you a lifeline? Or would you let fear and doubt hold you back? Maya's next decision will set her on a path she never imagined. Maya stared at the piece of paper long after the Tesla disappeared into the city's chaos. The words, you're not alone, echoed in her mind, bouncing between her skepticism and the part of her that desperately wanted to believe it. But trust was dangerous. It had cost her too much before. As the day dragged on, the city's rhythm grew harsher. Crowds pushed past her, their faces indifferent, their hands clutching bags of food or shopping. Maya tightened her grip on her blanket, the only thing keeping the morning chill at bay. Her stomach growled again. She could try the shelters, but most of them were overcrowded, and the few times she'd gone, the older kids or adults made her feel even smaller. She checked her pockets, finding the few coins she'd scavenged the day before. Not enough for a meal. Her fingers brushed the paper Elon had given her. Call me, his voice echoed in her memory. What if it's a trick? Her mind countered. She stuffed the paper deeper into her pocket. As the evening approached, Maya found herself in front of a bodega she often scavenged behind. The owner, Mr. Ramirez, wasn't cruel, but he wasn't kind either. He tolerated her presence so long as she didn't linger or make trouble. She peeked inside, scanning the shelves of food. Her stomach clenched at the sight of sandwiches in plastic wrap, but she couldn't risk stealing. The last time she tried, the shopkeeper had chased her 3 blocks with a bat. Hey, kid! A gruff voice startled her. She turned to see Mr. Ramirez leaning against the counter, arms crossed. You want something, or are you just standing there? Maya hesitated. If you're hungry, I've got yesterday's bread in the back. But if I catch you sneaking anything, we're gonna have a problem. Got it? She nodded quickly. He gestured toward the back door, and Maya slipped through, finding a box of bread past its prime but still edible. She grabbed a loaf and stuffed it into her bag. Gracias, she mumbled as she hurried out. Back in her usual alley, Maya ripped off a piece of bread and chewed slowly. Her mind wandered back to Elon. What kind of man drives a car like that into this part of town? And why would he care about her? Pulling the paper from her pocket again, she traced the numbers with her finger. What's the worst that can happen? She whispered to herself. He could laugh. He could forget. Or worse, he could care. That last thought scared her most of all. If someone cared, they could leave. They could break promises. They could hurt her. Maya didn't notice the tears spilling onto the paper until they blurred the ink. Hastily, she wiped them away, clutching the paper like a lifeline. She needed a phone. Night fell, and the streets grew quieter. Maya kept to the shadows, heading for the 24-hour convenience store near the bus station. The clerk there usually ignored her so long as she didn't linger. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A cheap prepaid phone hung on the wall display, locked behind glass. Maya checked the price. $40. Her heart sank. What are you doing, kid? The voice made her jump. The clerk, a young man barely out of his teens, was watching her from the counter. His expression was neutral, but his posture was wary. Nothing, she lied, stepping away from the display. Sure. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. Wait. She turned back, bracing for an accusation. Instead, he gestured to the display. You need a phone? Maya nodded hesitantly. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Look, I've got an old one in the back. It's not fancy, but it works. You want it? Her eyes widened. Why would you? Because I've been where you are, he said simply. And sometimes, you just need a break. Maya hesitated, but something in his tone felt genuine. How much? Free, he said, disappearing into the back room before she could argue. When he returned, he handed her a battered flip phone and a charger. It's got a few minutes on it. Enough to make a call or two. She stared at it, unsure what to say. Thank you, she finally managed. Don't mention it, he said with a faint smile. But, don't come back here expecting free stuff. This is a one-time thing. Maya nodded, clutching the phone as she left the store. Back in her alley, she sat on her makeshift bed, staring at the phone in her hands. The weight of it felt heavier than it should. She unfolded Elon's number again and carefully dialed. The line rang once, twice. Hello? His voice was warm, steady, and unmistakable. For a moment, Maya froze, unsure of what to say. It's me, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause, then a smile in his tone. Maya, I'm glad you called. And just like that, the walls she'd built around herself began to crack. Would you trust a stranger with a promise of hope? Maya took a leap, but what will Elon's next move be? Stay tuned for the next chapter as their paths intertwine further. Are you safe? Elon's voice was calm but laced with concern, the kind Maya hadn't heard directed at her in years. She clutched the phone tightly, her heart pounding as though each word might shatter the fragile connection. Yeah, I guess. You don't sound sure, Elon replied. Where are you right now? Maya hesitated. Trust didn't come easily. I'm okay. Just outside somewhere. A brief pause hung between them. Maya, he said gently, if you let me, I can help, but I need to know where you are. She bit her lip, torn between instinct and the strange feeling his words stirred in her. Something like safety. Finally, she gave him the cross streets of her alley, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said. Stay put. The call ended, leaving Maya staring at the dark screen. Why did I tell him? True to his word, Elon arrived within 20 minutes. Maya saw the sleek, white Tesla pull up and instinctively shrank back into the shadows. She half expected him to have forgotten or sent someone else in his place. But when the door opened, there he was, dressed casually in jeans and a hoodie. Maya, he called softly, scanning the dimly lit alley. Her blanket rustled as she stepped out, her gaze wary. You actually came, she murmured. Of course, he said with a small smile. You called. That's a big step. She hugged her arms to her chest, unsure how to respond. Are you hungry? He asked. Her stomach answered for her with a loud growl. Maya flushed, but Elon didn't laugh. Instead, he gestured to the car. Let's get you something to eat. The diner they went to was nothing fancy. Red vinyl booths and a long counter with coffee-stained menus. Maya hesitated at the door, acutely aware of how out of place she looked in her oversized hoodie and torn sneakers. "It's fine," Elon said gently, holding the door open. They slid into a booth near the back. A waitress appeared, eyeing Maya briefly before turning to Elon with a practiced smile. "What can I get for you?" "Two of the biggest breakfasts you've got," Elon said without missing a beat. The waitress jotted it down and disappeared. Maya shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "You didn't have to do all this." "I wanted to," Elon replied. "Everyone deserves a chance, Maya. Sometimes we just need someone to remind us of that." His words hit harder than she expected. She looked away, her fingers tracing the cracked edge of the table. "Why do you care? You don't even know me." Elon leaned forward, his gaze steady. "I don't have to know everything about you to see that you're strong. You've survived things most people couldn't imagine. That tells me you've got potential. But you're stuck in a cycle that's not your fault. I want to help you break out of it." Her throat tightened. Nobody had ever spoken to her like that before, as though she was worth saving. "Help how?" she asked quietly. "For starters, a safe place to stay," Elon said. "Somewhere you don't have to look over your shoulder or worry about your next meal." Maya's chest tightened. "And then what? You just leave, like everyone else?" His expression softened. "I'm not here to make promises I can't keep, but I'll stick around long enough to see you on your feet. After that, it's up to you." The food arrived, and Maya hesitated for only a moment before digging in. She hadn't had a proper meal in weeks, and the taste of warm pancakes and eggs almost brought tears to her eyes. Elon watched her with quiet patience, occasionally sipping his coffee. When she finally slowed down, he asked, "How long have you been on your own?" Maya's fork paused midway to her mouth. She set it down, her appetite suddenly gone. "A couple of years," she said cautiously. "Your parents?" he asked gently. Her jaw tightened. "Don't have any." Elon didn't press further, but his eyes reflected something she hadn't seen in a long time: compassion. "Well," he said after a moment, "you've got someone now." Maya stared at him, unsure how to process his words. After breakfast, they stepped back outside into the cool night air. Elon turned to her. "I have an idea, but only if you're willing to trust me a little more." She raised an eyebrow. "What kind of idea?" "There's a program I fund: mentorship, education, housing. It's for kids like you who've been dealt a rough hand. I'd like to introduce you to the people running it. They can help you figure out what comes next." Maya crossed her arms. "What if I say no?" "Then I'll respect that," Elon said simply. "But you'll still have my number if you ever change your mind." His sincerity disarmed her. She wanted to say no, to keep the walls around her heart intact. But something about the way he looked at her, as though she mattered, made her want to believe him. "Okay," she said finally. A smile broke across his face. "All right, let's get started." Can Maya find the courage to let go of her fears and embrace a new path? As Elon opens a door to opportunity, what challenges will she face next? Stay tuned for the next chapter of Maya's journey. The black Tesla glided down quiet city streets, the hum of its electric motor filling the silence between Maya and Elon. She stared out the window, her face a mask of detachment, but inside, her mind raced. "Where are we going?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "To a place called Haven House," Elon replied, his tone calm and reassuring. "It's a transitional home for kids who need a fresh start." Maya tensed. "Like a group home?" "Not exactly," he said quickly. "Haven House is different. It's not just a roof over your head. It's a place where you can figure out what you want from life. No one's going to force you into anything." His words hung in the air as they turned onto a tree-lined street. Ahead, a sprawling building came into view, its warm lights glowing against the night sky. The sign outside read Haven House, a place to begin again. Maya's stomach churned. The front doors opened to reveal a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and salt and pepper hair. She smiled warmly. "You must be Maya," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Mrs. Jacobs, the director here. Welcome to Haven House." Maya hesitated before shaking her hand, glancing nervously at Elon. He gave her an encouraging nod. Mrs. Jacobs gestured for them to come inside. The lobby was cozy, with plush couches, framed photos of smiling kids on the walls, and the faint smell of cinnamon wafting through the air. "This is where you'll stay," Mrs. Jacobs explained as she led them down a hallway. "Each resident gets their own room, and we have staff available 24/7 if you need anything. We also offer classes, counseling, and mentorship programs tailored to your goals." Maya felt a mix of awe and apprehension. It all sounded too good to be true. They stopped in front of a door. "This will be your room," Mrs. Jacobs said, opening it to reveal a small but inviting space. A twin bed with a colorful quilt, a desk with a lamp, and a window overlooking the courtyard made it feel more like a home than any place Maya had been in years. She lingered in the doorway, unable to step inside. "What's the catch?" "There's no catch," Mrs. Jacobs said gently. "But we do ask for one thing, that you try. Give this a chance, even if it feels scary at first." Maya glanced at Elon. "And you think I belong here?" "I think you belong somewhere safe," he said. "Somewhere you can be yourself without fear." Her chest tightened. The urge to bolt rose like a tide, but she forced herself to take a step forward. Then another. Elon stayed long enough to make sure Maya was settled before heading to the door. "This isn't goodbye," he told her. "I'll check in on you soon." Maya didn't respond, her emotions too tangled to articulate. But as she watched him leave, a strange sense of loss settled over her. The next morning, Maya woke to sunlight streaming through the window. It took her a moment to remember where she was. The events of the previous night felt like a dream. Her door creaked open, and a girl about her age peeked in. "Hey," the girl said, her voice cheerful. "You're the new kid, right?" "I'm Zoe." Maya blinked at her. Yeah, I guess." Zoe grinned and stepped inside. "Mrs. Jacobs said I should show you around. Come on, breakfast is starting soon." Maya reluctantly followed Zoe down the hall to the dining room, where several kids were already gathered. They ranged in age from preteens to older teenagers, their laughter and chatter filling the space. Maya felt a pang of envy. How do they act so normal? Zoe nudged her toward the buffet line. "The pancakes are pretty good," she said, piling her plate high. Maya cautiously served herself, then sat at an empty table. She kept her head down, hoping to avoid attention, but Zoe plopped down across from her, unbothered by Maya's silence. "So," Zoe began between bites, "what's your story?" Maya bristled. "Why do you care?" Zoe shrugged. "Just trying to be friendly. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to." Maya studied her for a moment, unsure whether to trust her. "It's complicated," she said finally. Zoe smirked. "Isn't it always?" For the first time in a long time, Maya felt a flicker of something close to connection. After breakfast, Mrs. Jacobs found Maya in the courtyard. "How are you settling in?" she asked. "It's different," Maya admitted. "Different can be good," Mrs. Jacobs said with a smile. "We're here to help you figure out what comes next at your own pace. No rush." Maya nodded, though doubts still gnawed at her. Could she really rebuild her life here? Can Maya embrace this new chapter in her life, or will her past fears and struggles hold her back? With the support of Haven House and Elon's guidance, her journey is just beginning. What challenges lie ahead as Maya takes her first steps toward a brighter future? Maya spent the day exploring Haven House, feeling more like a ghost than a resident. She lingered in the library, flipped through art supplies in the creative room, and watched a group of kids play basketball in the courtyard. Yet, every warm interaction, every laugh, seemed to echo with a question. Do I really belong here? By evening, Maya was back in her room, staring at the blank notebook Mrs. Jacobs had given her. "Write down whatever comes to mind," Mrs. Jacobs had encouraged earlier. "Sometimes it helps to see your thoughts on paper." But the page remained untouched. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Zoe poked her head in, her ever-present grin lighting up the room. "Hey, new kid, you want to join us in the rec room? We're watching a movie." Maya hesitated, clutching the notebook as if it were a shield. "I'm good." Zoe tilted her head. "Come on, it's not as lame as it sounds. We've got popcorn." "I said I'm fine," Maya snapped, more sharply than she intended. Zoe raised her hands in mock surrender. Okay. No pressure." She lingered for a moment before stepping back. But, You don't have to do this alone, you know? The words hung in the air long after Zoe left. Maya sat in silence, her thoughts swirling. She'd spent so much of her life fighting to survive, to shield herself from hurt, that the idea of letting people in felt terrifying. Her gaze drifted to the window, where the faint glow of city lights shimmered in the distance. Somewhere out there, people lived lives Maya could barely imagine. They weren't scraping by or running from shadows. They were thriving. Was it really possible for her to find that kind of life? The next morning, Maya joined Mrs. Jacobs in her office. "You wanted to see me?" she asked, shifting nervously. "Yes," Mrs. Jacobs said with a warm smile. "I wanted to talk about your interests. We believe in helping our residents discover their passions. Is there anything you've always wanted to try?" Maya blinked at her. No one had ever asked her that before. "I don't know," she said cautiously. "I guess drawing? I used to doodle a lot when I was younger." Mrs. Jacobs beamed. "That's wonderful. We have an art program here. I'll introduce you to Ms. Carter, our instructor. She's amazing." Maya felt a flicker of excitement, quickly buried under doubt. "What if I'm no good?" Mrs. Jacobs leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "This isn't about being good. It's about expressing yourself, finding what makes you happy. No judgment." Maya nodded, though her nerves churned. Later that afternoon, Maya found herself in the art studio, surrounded by canvases, brushes, and tubes of paint. Miss Carter, a vibrant woman with wild curls and paint-smeared hands, greeted her with enthusiasm. "So, you're our new artist," Miss Carter exclaimed. "What do you want to start with?" Maya hesitated, overwhelmed by the choices. "I'm not sure." Miss Carter handed her a sketchpad and a pencil. "No pressure. Just let your hand do the talking." Maya sat at a table and began to draw, her strokes tentative at first. But as she lost herself in the rhythm of the pencil gliding across the paper, a sense of calm washed over her. When she finally looked up, an hour had passed. Miss Carter peered over her shoulder and gasped. "Maya, this is incredible." Maya frowned. "It's just a sketch." "It's more than that," Miss Carter insisted. "You've got talent, kid. Real talent." For the first time, Maya allowed herself to believe it might be true. That evening, Maya sat in her room, staring at the sketch she'd drawn, a cityscape with a lone figure standing in the shadows. It wasn't perfect, but it felt honest. Her thoughts drifted to Elon Musk. What had compelled him to help her? And why had he cared so much about what happened next? She picked up the notebook and began to write. "He saw me when no one else did." As Maya begins to uncover her hidden talents, will she find the courage to trust in herself and the people around her? What role will Elon play as she navigates this unfamiliar path toward hope? 2 days after Maya started exploring the art program, Haven House buzzed with unusual activity. Staff moved briskly, double-checking everything from the cleanliness of the common rooms to the inventory of snacks in the kitchen. The residents exchanged whispers, curious about the sudden energy. Maya noticed it, too, as she worked on a new sketch in the art studio. Even Ms. Carter seemed more distracted than usual, tidying up shelves and straightening picture frames that hadn't been touched in months. "What's going on?" Maya finally asked. Ms. Carter glanced at her with a secretive smile. "We're expecting a very special guest today." Before Maya could press for details, Mrs. Jacobs appeared in the doorway. "Maya, could you come with me for a moment?" Maya followed Mrs. Jacobs to the main office, her heart racing. Had she done something wrong? But when she stepped inside, her breath caught. Sitting casually in a chair, dressed in a simple black suit, was Elon Musk. "Maya," Mrs. Jacobs said gently, "I believe you two have met before." Maya froze, clutching her sketchpad like a lifeline. She hadn't expected to see him again. Not here, not now. Elon stood and offered a warm smile. "Hey, Maya, how are you doing?" I'm fine," she stammered, overwhelmed. Mrs. Jacobs gave her an encouraging nod. "I'll leave you two to talk." The door closed softly behind her, leaving Maya alone with the man who had upended her life in a single evening. Elon gestured to the chair across from him. "Mind if we sit?" Maya hesitated, but eventually sank into the seat. "I wanted to check on you," Elon began, his tone sincere. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about you. I knew I had to make sure you were okay. Maya stared at him, unsure of what to say. No one had ever cared this much about her well-being before, not even strangers. It's different here, she admitted, but it's not bad. I'm still figuring things out. Elon nodded, his gaze steady. That's all anyone can ask of you. Progress doesn't happen overnight. There was a long pause before he leaned forward slightly. Maya, I see a lot of potential in you. That night, when you told me your story, I realized how much you've endured and how much you've overcome. I think you have something unique to offer the world. Maya frowned, unsure how to respond. She'd spent most of her life being overlooked, treated like she was invisible. To hear someone, him, say she mattered was almost too much to process. Elon reached into his pocket and pulled out a small business card. He slid it across the table toward her. This is my personal contact information, he explained. If you ever need help, whether it's guidance, resources, or just someone to talk to, don't hesitate to reach out. Maya picked up the card, her fingers trembling. The weight of the moment pressed down on her. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. You don't even know me. Elon's expression softened. Because everyone deserves a chance, Maya. Someone gave me a chance once, and it changed my life. I want to pay that forward. Their conversation drifted into lighter territory after that. Elon asked about her interests, her experiences at Haven House so far, and what she hoped to accomplish. For the first time, Maya found herself opening up without fear. By the time he left, she felt different, lighter, somehow. As she watched his car drive away from the front window, Zoe sidled up beside her. You've got connections, huh? She teased. That's not just any special guest. That's the Elon Musk. Maya shook her head, still processing everything. I don't think it's like that. Zoe nudged her playfully. Whatever you say, new kid. But if you ever become a billionaire's protege, don't forget us little people, okay? That night, Maya returned to her room, her mind racing. She picked up the notebook Mrs. Jacobs had given her and began to write again, her thoughts spilling onto the page. Maybe he's right. Maybe I can be more than this. She glanced at the sketchpad beside her and made a silent promise to herself. She would give this new life a real chance. Elon's visit sparked something new in Maya, a flicker of hope and the possibility of a brighter future. But will she have the courage to embrace the opportunities ahead? The days that followed Elon Musk's visit were a whirlwind for Maya. Every morning, she woke up with a renewed sense of purpose, her mind buzzing with the conversation they'd had. It was as if the weight of her past had lightened, just a little, and she could see the world, her future, differently. She threw herself into the art program with a fierceness that surprised even herself. Her drawings, once filled with dark and twisted images of the streets she'd known, began to shift. They became more hopeful, more alive. She found herself sketching scenes of quiet beauty, dappled sunlight through trees, colorful flowers pushing through cracked sidewalks, a horizon filled with endless possibility. Even Zoe noticed the change. You're different, Zoe commented one afternoon, watching Maya work. You're happier. Maya paused, her pencil still in hand. I guess I am. I think I've been given a second chance. Zoe tilted her head, a skeptical look crossing her face. Second chance? You mean from Elon Musk? Maya nodded, her fingers tightening around her sketchpad. Yeah, I think so. It feels like he believes in me. Zoe raised an eyebrow. You don't think that's weird? Like a billionaire, just helping out a random kid? Maya hesitated. I don't know. It's just different. He's different. He doesn't look at me like everyone else does. The next day, a package arrived for Maya at the front desk. She didn't expect much, probably just some more art supplies from Mrs. Jacobs, who was always thoughtful in that way. But when she opened it, her heart skipped a beat. Inside was a set of high-quality art materials, sketchbooks, colored pencils, charcoal, and markers, all neatly organized in a sturdy carrying case. The note that accompanied it was brief but heartfelt. For your future. Make it bright. It was signed simply, Elon Musk. Maya stared at the contents of the package, her fingers brushing over the materials. For the first time in her life, Someone was investing in her. Not just her survival, but her potential. The weight of that generosity almost brought her to tears. That evening, Maya went for a walk to clear her mind. Haven House was located on the outskirts of town, and the streets around it were quiet and dimly lit. As she strolled down the sidewalk, she saw a familiar face in the distance, one that made her pause. It was Marcus, the boy from her old neighborhood, the one who used to run with the gang. He stood on the corner, leaning against a streetlight, his hands in his pockets, his gaze fixed on the ground. Maya stopped, her heart pounding. She hadn't seen him in months. He looked up and saw her. His eyes widened, and a flash of recognition passed between them. Maya. His voice was uncertain, like he wasn't sure if she would acknowledge him. She took a cautious step forward. Marcus, what are you doing here? He shrugged, a look of shame crossing his face. Just hanging out. You know, the usual. Maya hesitated, unsure of what to say. The old part of her wanted to walk away, to avoid the trouble he represented. But another part, the part that was slowly growing, the part that wanted something different, felt a flicker of sympathy. Do you want to talk? She asked, surprising herself. Marcus looked at her, his expression softening. Yeah, I think I'd like that. They sat on the curb for a while, talking about the old days. Maya shared the small changes that had come with being at Haven House, the art program, the new sense of hope that had found its way into her life. Marcus, in turn, confessed that things hadn't been going well for him. He was still stuck in the same cycle, fighting for survival, using the streets to escape the reality of his life. But as they talked, Maya realized something. She wasn't the same person who had left the streets behind. She wasn't a victim of her past, nor was she the person she had been just a few weeks ago. She had choices now. Maya, Marcus said after a long silence, do you really think you can make it out of here? Maya looked him in the eye, her heart steady. I don't just think it, Marcus. I know I can. The next morning, Maya woke up with a new resolve. She had to take action, not just for herself, but for others like Marcus, who were still caught in the system that had almost swallowed her whole. She went to Mrs. Jacobs and shared her thoughts. I want to start a program, something for the kids who don't have a place like this, a place to find their own way out, like I did. Mrs. Jacobs smiled, her eyes shining with approval. That's a beautiful idea, Maya. Let's start working on it. Maya's vision of change is taking shape, but as she reaches out to others like Marcus, the path ahead won't be easy. Can she create a way out for those still stuck in the streets? And will her newfound hope be enough to carry her through the challenges ahead? The days that followed Maya's conversation with Mrs. Jacobs were filled with a flurry of activity. She couldn't stop thinking about the new program she wanted to create, something that could help others like her. A program for kids still stuck on the streets, those who hadn't yet seen the light at the end of the tunnel. She felt an urgency to act, a responsibility to use the chance she had been given to make a real difference. She met with Mrs. Jacobs every day, planning out the details, what the program would look like, who they could bring in as mentors, how they would fund it. But Maya knew, deep down, that it wasn't just about the logistics. It was about showing kids like her that they didn't have to be defined by their past, that they, too, could create a future for themselves. One afternoon, as Maya was working on the program proposal in the art room, her phone buzzed. It was an email notification. She unlocked her phone, and her eyes widened as she read the subject line. Your program proposal has been approved. Her heart skipped a beat. She quickly opened the email, her fingers trembling as she scrolled down to read the full message. It was from the foundation Mrs. Jacobs had contacted on her behalf, a grant organization focused on empowering at-risk youth. They had read her proposal, they had seen the passion behind it, and they wanted to help. The grant they were offering was enough to cover the costs of starting the program, including materials, workshops, and even a few staff members. Maya sat back, stunned. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. This was real. This was happening. Later that evening, as Maya sat on the steps of Haven House, Zoe came up beside her. Maya was still holding her phone, staring at the email like it was a dream she was afraid might slip away. What's going on? Zoe asked, her voice curious. Maya turned to her, her face lighting up. It's the program. The grant, Mrs. Jacobs and I. We're going to make it happen. Zoe's eyes widened. Wait, seriously? Yeah, Maya said, her voice full of disbelief. They approved it. It's actually happening. Zoe threw her arms around Maya in a tight hug. That's amazing. You're really doing it, Maya. I always knew you were going to change the world. Maya laughed softly, feeling a surge of warmth in her chest. I'm not changing the world, but maybe I can change a few lives. Zoe pulled back, grinning. That's enough. One life at a time, right? The following weeks were a blur of meetings, paperwork, and planning. Maya worked tirelessly with Mrs. Jacobs to get everything in place, securing mentors, reaching out to local organizations for support, and gathering a group of kids who might benefit from the program. It was exhausting, but it was also exhilarating. Through it all, Maya couldn't help but think of Marcus. She hadn't seen him much since that night on the corner, and she wondered how he was doing. Had he stuck to the streets? Was he still caught in the cycle? One evening, as she was leaving the art room, she spotted him again, standing across the street, looking lost. She hesitated, then crossed over to him. Marcus, she called softly, and he looked up, his face breaking into a half-smile when he saw her. Maya, he said, his voice quieter than usual. You've been busy, huh? I've been trying to get something started, she said, her eyes searching his face. A program. For kids like us. His eyebrows furrowed. Like us? You mean, like the kids you used to hang out with? Maya nodded, her tone serious. Exactly. I want to give them a chance to get out, to do something better. I can't do it alone, though. I need people like you, Marcus. He looked down at the ground, his hands shoved into his pockets. I don't know, Maya. I'm not sure I'm cut out for that kind of thing. Maya took a step closer to him, her voice gentle but firm. Marcus, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to help, because you've been through the same things. You know what it's like. And that's exactly why you're the kind of person we need. There was a long pause as Marcus wrestled with his thoughts. Then, finally, he nodded. Okay, I'll help, but don't expect me to be a saint. Maya smiled, feeling a wave of relief. I wouldn't want you to be. The next few months were filled with progress. The program took shape, and with the support of the grant and local partners, they were able to secure a space, a small community center that had been abandoned for years. It was in the heart of the city, in a neighborhood that had long been forgotten by most. But it was perfect. It was a blank slate, ready to be turned into something meaningful. Maya spent countless hours there, painting walls, setting up workstations, and helping the kids get settled into their new environment. The first group of participants, kids who had once lived on the same streets she had, began showing up, looking skeptical but curious. They didn't know what to expect, and Maya understood that. She had been them once. But she also knew that this was the beginning of something that could change their lives. And hers. As Maya watches the program come to life, she realizes that the journey isn't over. It's just begun. Can she guide these kids toward a brighter future? Or will the world outside tear them down again? And what will happen when the community, and even her old life, comes knocking at her door once more? Maya stood at the entrance of the newly renovated community center, her heart pounding with both excitement and trepidation. Today was the first official day of the program. The kids would be showing up any minute, and she couldn't help but feel a wave of nerves. She had worked so hard to get this far, but she knew that the real test was just beginning. You're ready, Mrs. Jacobs said, walking up beside her with a reassuring smile. She had been by Maya's side every step of the way, offering guidance and encouragement. I hope so, Maya said, glancing around. The space had been transformed into a vibrant, welcoming environment. The walls were lined with colorful murals, showcasing scenes of growth and hope. There were workstations set up for various activities, art, music, and even a small tech corner for coding and computer lessons. Mrs. Jacobs placed a hand on her shoulder. You've built something incredible here. Don't doubt that for a second. Before Maya could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. She turned to see the first group of kids trickling in. They looked uncertain, unsure of what to expect. Some wore expressions of suspicion, others of hope, but all of them carried the weight of their pasts. Maya took a deep breath and stepped forward, her voice steady. Hey, everyone, she called out. drawing their attention. "Welcome to the Future Makers program. I'm Maya, and this is where things change." The kids exchanged glances, sizing her up. Maya didn't flinch. She had been where they were. She knew what it felt like to walk into a place that seemed too good to be true, where everyone seemed to be playing a part in a dream they couldn't afford to believe. But she also knew that dreams, when nurtured, could take root. "I'm not gonna pretend it's gonna be easy," Maya continued, her voice firm. "This isn't about some quick fix or magic. This is about us coming together and deciding that we're worth more than what the world says about us. It's about pushing past the mess, the failures, and building something we can be proud of." One of the boys, a tall figure with a hoodie pulled up over his head, scoffed from the back. "Yeah? And what makes you think we even care?" Maya met his gaze, unflinching. "Because I've been where you are. I've seen what it's like to feel like nobody's ever gonna give you a chance. But let me tell you something. I'm here to give you one. And if you're willing to take it, we'll build something that changes everything." There was a moment of silence as the group absorbed her words. Some of them glanced around, unsure, but a few nodded, as though a spark had been lit. After a long pause, the hoodie boy spoke again, his voice quieter this time. "I don't know if I'm ready for this." Maya's heart softened. She stepped closer, her voice gentle but direct. "None of us are ever really ready, but we do it anyway. We take it one step at a time." A small, hesitant nod came from him, and that was enough for Maya. She smiled, feeling a glimmer of hope she hadn't known she needed. The first week flew by in a whirlwind of introductions, activities, and adjustments. Maya poured herself into the program, meeting with the kids, learning about their struggles, their hopes, their fears. It was exhausting, but it was also deeply fulfilling. And yet, there were moments when the weight of it all threatened to crush her. There were kids who acted out, refusing to participate, challenging her at every turn. And there were the whispers of doubt that came from the outside world, the ones that told her it was too much, too fast, too idealistic. But Maya pushed through. She had made it this far, and she wasn't about to back down now. One afternoon, as she sat at the desk organizing the upcoming week's schedule, a knock came at the door. She looked up to see Marcus standing there, his eyes serious. "Maya," he said quietly, stepping inside. "I need to talk to you." Maya raised an eyebrow. "What's going on?" He hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "I'm in. I want to help with the program. I've been talking to a few of the kids, and I think I can make a difference. I need to be sure it's the right move." Maya's heart skipped a beat. This was what she had hoped for, what she had known could happen. Marcus had always been a part of the solution. She just hadn't been sure if he would see it for himself. "Of course, Marcus," she said, standing up. "You're already a part of it. The program's about all of us, about showing these kids that they have options. You can help just by being there for them." He looked down, fidgeting with the hem of his jacket. "I don't know if I'm ready to be a role model, Maya." Maya smiled softly. "You don't have to be perfect. Just be yourself. They need to see that you've made it out. They need to know that it's possible for them too." He nodded slowly, his eyes meeting hers. "All right, I'm in." As the program continued to grow, so did the sense of unity among the kids and mentors. But Maya knew that challenges were still ahead. The road to transformation was never a straight line, and there would be setbacks. There would be days when everything seemed like it was falling apart. But as she watched the kids beginning to open up, beginning to believe in themselves again, she knew that there was no turning back. This was more than just a program. This was the beginning of a movement, and Maya was ready for the fight. The foundation was set, but now the true test begins. Will Maya be able to guide these kids through the challenges ahead, or will their pasts pull them back into the darkness they're trying to escape? As the stakes get higher, Maya must confront not only the struggles of her participants, but also the truths of her own journey. What will happen when the world pushes back against hope? Stay tuned. The community center was buzzing with energy, but Maya's mind was elsewhere. She had been running on adrenaline for weeks now, and though she had built something incredible, the weight of it all was beginning to catch up with her. The kids were showing up more consistently now, their faces bright with curiosity and, for some, a flicker of hope. But the pressure was mounting. Maya had promised them a chance at something better, But as the days passed, she began to wonder if she was equipped to keep that promise. She sat in her office, surrounded by papers, schedules, and notes. She had been reviewing a report on the kids' progress when a knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Hey, you got a minute?" Marcus's voice came through, familiar and grounding. Maya looked up, her exhaustion showing in the deep lines beneath her eyes. "Of course. Come in." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. There was an air of seriousness about him today, and Maya could feel it. "I've been talking to the kids," Marcus said, his tone low. "Some of them, well, a few of them, are acting out. I think they're struggling to trust the process." Maya nodded, her heart heavy. She knew that the deeper the wounds ran, the harder the healing would be. But this was different. These kids weren't just facing a lack of opportunity. They were fighting against everything the world had told them about who they were. Maya had underestimated how deep that distrust ran. "What's going on?" she asked, sitting up straighter. "Mostly it's Jamal. He's got a lot of anger. He won't talk about it, but you can see it in everything he does. And then there's Kayla. She's closed off, keeps pushing people away. They don't want to trust anyone, especially not us." Maya's heart tightened. Jamal and Kayla had both shown flashes of brilliance since joining the program. Jamal had a natural gift for mechanics, and Kayla was quick with her hands, a natural artist. But their pain was still too fresh, their defenses too high. "I know," Maya said softly. "I've noticed. But I think we need to dig deeper, Marcus. They're not acting out for no reason. There's something in their past that's still holding them back. We can't just push through it. They need to feel heard." Marcus leaned against the desk, his brow furrowing. "But how do we get them to talk? How do we break through the walls they've built?" Maya paused, staring out the window for a moment. "Maybe we don't. Maybe we show them that we're here, no matter what. We don't force them to open up, but we make sure they know they're safe. And then we wait. We wait for the right moment." Marcus sighed, his shoulders heavy with the weight of responsibility. "I don't know, Maya. What if we wait too long? What if we lose them before they even start to trust us?" "I won't let that happen," she said, her voice unwavering. "We're not just here to fix them, Marcus. We're here to walk beside them. They need to know they're not alone. And as long as they know that, I believe they'll come around." Marcus was quiet for a moment before nodding. "I hope you're right. I'll keep an eye on them. But we might need to come up with a new approach. If we can't reach them through the usual methods, maybe we need to get creative." Maya smiled, grateful for his dedication. "I'm open to ideas." The next day, Maya decided to take a different approach. Instead of sticking to the scheduled activities, she decided to give the kids some space to explore their interests on their own terms. She divided them into small groups based on their passions: Jamal in the mechanics corner, Kayla with a paintbrush in her hand, and others working in their respective areas. At first, it felt like chaos. Some of the kids were unsure, hovering near the walls, hesitant to engage. But then something happened. Jamal, usually too reserved to speak much, started tinkering with an old bicycle in the mechanics corner. As the others gathered around, intrigued by the idea of fixing something themselves, he began explaining the process with surprising enthusiasm. His walls started to crack. Kayla, too, found herself drawn to the canvas, her strokes bold and defiant. Slowly, she opened up about the pain she carried with her, her art becoming a mirror for the struggles she had never spoken of aloud. The other kids stood in silence, watching as she poured her soul into the painting. Maya watched it all unfold, her heart swelling with hope. Sometimes the breakthrough didn't come from talking. It came from sharing a part of yourself, through action, through creation. By the end of the day, Maya could see a shift. The kids weren't just participating, they were connecting. And though there was still a long way to go, she knew that today was a small victory. Later that evening, as Maya sat in her office going over some paperwork, her phone buzzed. It was an unexpected message, one that made her heart skip a beat. Elon Musk. The message was brief, but it struck her like a lightning bolt. "I've been thinking about you, Maya. I know it's been tough, but I believe in what you're doing. I want to help. Let's talk soon." Maya's hand trembled as she put the phone down. She had known this day might come, the moment when her mentor, the man who had changed her life, would step forward to offer his support. But she hadn't expected it to be so soon. Was she ready for this next chapter? She didn't know. But she did know one thing. She had already come too far to turn back now. With Elon's offer of help on the table, Maya faces a decision that could change the course of the program forever. Will she accept his support and take the leap into a larger world? Or will she try to go it alone? And more importantly, can the kids continue to grow, despite their past holding them back? The stakes have never been higher. The days following Elon's message felt like a whirlwind. Maya barely had time to process the gravity of his words before her phone buzzed again, this time with an invitation. "Let's meet tomorrow. I'll send a car." Maya stared at the message for several moments, her thoughts racing. It wasn't just the offer of financial support that made her nervous. It was the potential for everything to change. The idea of scaling up the program, reaching more kids, offering them more opportunities. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. Would they be ready for it? Would she be ready? She spent the rest of the evening pacing, her mind torn between the possibilities and the risks. What if they lost their way? What if they started to focus more on the money than on the heart of the program? She couldn't let that happen. The next morning, a sleek black car pulled up outside the community center, its tinted windows giving away nothing about who or what lay inside. Maya stood at the door, watching the vehicle in the distance, her heart pounding in her chest. As the car came to a stop, the door opened, and out stepped Elon Musk himself. Dressed casually in a jacket and jeans, he looked every bit the tech mogul, yet there was an air of warmth about him that Maya hadn't expected. "Maya," he greeted her, extending a hand. "It's good to finally meet you in person." She shook his hand, trying to mask her surprise. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure if this was real or just some dream." He laughed softly. "No dream. I've been following your work. What you're doing here with these kids, it's something rare, something real. I want to be a part of it." They exchanged pleasantries before heading inside. Once they were settled in her office, Elon got straight to the point. "Maya, I've been thinking a lot about what you've created. It's not just about offering opportunities. It's about changing lives, and that's something I want to support. I believe I can help you get the resources you need to grow this." Maya listened intently, her mind reeling. She had always dreamed of expanding, of reaching more kids in need, but this was bigger than anything she had imagined. "Tell me what you're thinking," she said cautiously, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "I want to help build more centers like this, not just here but all over the country. We'll give them the tools, education, mentorship, opportunity, and make sure they have the support they need long-term. We'll bring in professionals, not just from the tech industry but from all fields, to work with them. It's not just about money. It's about creating a network of people who care." Maya's breath caught in her throat. It was exactly what she'd always hoped for, what she'd wanted to build. But the reality of it was almost overwhelming. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of this," she admitted, her voice quiet. "What if I fail? What if I can't keep it authentic? These kids are depending on me." Elon leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "I believe in you, Maya. You've already proven you can do it. You've reached them. All you need now is the support to reach more. I'm not asking you to do this alone. I'm asking you to take the next step." Her heart raced. This was the moment. The chance to create something that could change lives on a massive scale. But it wasn't just about scaling up. It was about preserving the heart of what she had built. She thought about Jamal, about Kayla, about every kid who had walked through those doors, uncertain and broken, but who had started to heal. She couldn't let that go. "I need to think about it," she said after a long pause. Elon nodded. "Of course. Take all the time you need. But just know that when you're ready, I'm here." That night, Maya stayed up long after the sun had set, staring out at the city lights from her small apartment. Her thoughts were clouded with doubt, but also with a flicker of hope. She thought back to her first day at the community center, to the way she had felt when she walked into that space full of kids who didn't know if anyone cared about them. Everything she had done up until now had been about them, giving them a chance when no one else would. But what if this next step was the key to unlocking a future for them all? What if this was the chance to take everything she'd built and turn it into something even bigger, something that would truly change the trajectory of these kids' lives forever? She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. Then, with newfound clarity, she picked up her phone and sent a message to Elon. "I'm in. Let's make it happen." The next few weeks were a blur. Elon's team of experts got to work, helping Maya refine the vision for the program, finding potential locations for new centers, and creating partnerships with mentors and industry leaders who would guide the kids. It was bigger than Maya had ever imagined. But as the momentum built, so did the pressure. With each new challenge, Maya found herself questioning whether she could live up to the task ahead. Was she really ready for this? And what about the kids? Would they be able to keep up with the rapid changes? Would they stay grounded, or would they lose sight of what had brought them here in the first place? As Maya steps into a new phase of her journey, the stakes are higher than ever. She has the chance to build something truly life-changing. But will the pressure be too much? And how will the kids respond to the changes? The future is uncertain, and the path forward is anything but clear. The transformation that followed Maya's decision was both exhilarating and overwhelming. The weeks after her commitment to Elon Musk felt like a whirlwind. Her phone buzzed constantly, with messages and emails pouring in from all sides. It wasn't just the logistics of expanding. It was the whirlwind of planning, budgeting, securing resources, and building a network from the ground up. Maya found herself meeting with financial experts, education specialists, and community organizers who had signed on to help. Elon had brought in people with experience in scaling businesses and nonprofits, all of whom were excited about the potential of the program. Maya tried her best to keep up with the pace, but there were moments when she felt like she was drowning. The pressure mounted as deadlines loomed for the launch of the new centers. She had once prided herself on being able to juggle everything, to keep her focus on the kids who mattered most. But now, as her vision expanded, she found herself pulled in multiple directions, balancing spreadsheets and board meetings while struggling to keep the personal connection that had made the program so successful. One evening, as she sat in her office staring at a mountain of paperwork, Jamal knocked on the door. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. "You've been looking like a ghost these days." Maya put her pen down and looked at him, her face momentarily crumbling. "I don't know, Jamal. It's all happening so fast. I don't want to lose what we've built here, you know?" He nodded, stepping into the room and sitting down across from her. "I get it, but you're not in this alone, right? You've got us, everyone who's part of this program, and you've got Elon backing you. You're making a real difference, Maya." Maya sighed, leaning back in her chair. "But what if I screw it all up? What if it gets too big, and I forget why we started in the first place?" Jamal thought for a moment before responding. "Then we'll help you remember. All of us. Don't forget that this thing, it's bigger than any one person. We all have a stake in it now. You don't have to carry the weight alone." Maya gave him a weak smile. "Thanks, Jamal. I don't know what I'd do without you." "You don't have to figure it all out right now," Jamal said, standing up to leave. "Take a break, get some rest. You've been pushing yourself too hard. Tomorrow's another day, and we'll get through it together." Maya watched as Jamal left her office, his words lingering in the air. She knew he was right. She didn't have to do this alone. But the pressure of the unknown, the scope of what she was about to undertake, was still heavy on her heart. The following morning, she was met with a new challenge, a meeting with the team that was planning the expansion. Elon had flown in for the day to check on progress, and he wanted to discuss the next steps. As they gathered in the conference room, Maya felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a business meeting. This was the future of the program she had worked so hard to build. She had to make sure they stayed true to their mission, even as they grew. Elon stood at the front of the room, his usual confidence radiating as he spoke to the team. "We're at a turning point. We have a chance to reach kids across the country, kids who might never have had a shot otherwise. I believe in this vision, and I know all of you do, too. But we need to make sure we're prepared for the challenges that come with growth." Maya took a deep breath, then stood up, her voice steady despite the nerves twisting in her stomach. "We need to keep the kids at the center of everything we do. This can't just be about scaling up for the sake of numbers. We need to make sure we're giving them the tools to succeed: education, mentorship, emotional support. If we lose that, then we've lost everything." Elon nodded, his expression serious. "Absolutely. That's why we're bringing in experts to help guide the process. We'll keep everything grounded in the community. It's about people, not just infrastructure. The conversation turned to specifics, locations, funding, staffing. As the meeting progressed, Maya found herself feeling a sense of hope. They were laying the groundwork for something that could truly make a difference, not just for the kids in their program, but for future generations. But even with the support around her, Maya couldn't shake the feeling of being in uncharted waters. This was the kind of opportunity she had always dreamed of, but now that it was within her grasp, she had to wonder. Could she navigate the storm ahead? Later that day, Maya went for a walk through the community center, her mind still buzzing with the meeting's details. As she walked down the familiar hallway, she passed by the rooms where kids were working, laughing, and learning. The energy was contagious, and for a moment, she felt at peace. One of the kids, a young girl named Kayla, came up to her, her eyes wide with excitement. "Maya, Maya," Kayla called out, tugging on her sleeve. "I just wanted to thank you for everything. I'm going to college, you know? I got my acceptance letter today." Maya's heart swelled with pride. "Kayla, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you." The girl beamed, her joy filling the room. "None of this would have happened without you. You gave me a chance when no one else would. I'll never forget that." Maya smiled, the weight of the world temporarily lifting off her shoulders. This was why she did it. This was what kept her going. The faces of kids like Kayla, whose lives were forever changed by the opportunity they were given. With the future of the program hanging in the balance, Maya faces a crossroads. Can she maintain the authenticity and heart of the community she built while scaling to new heights? Or will the pressures of expansion overwhelm everything she has worked so hard to create? The journey is just beginning, and the path ahead is uncertain. The weight of her responsibilities was starting to become too much for Maya to bear. Each new obstacle, each new challenge, felt like it was pulling her further from the person she had once been. The woman who walked into this journey with nothing but hope and a mission to change the lives of kids like her. Now, with everything escalating at a pace that made her head spin, she was beginning to question herself. The pressure from investors, the expectations from Elon and the team, and the constant barrage of decisions to make. It was all too much. She had become a stranger to herself. It wasn't just about scaling up anymore. It was about navigating a corporate world she had never known. Maya found herself attending meetings where the jargon flew over her head, and people she barely knew debated over numbers and strategies that seemed so distant from the original dream. The evening after another exhausting day of back-to-back meetings, Maya sat in her office, staring at the pile of contracts and proposals in front of her. She had made the decision to expand, to follow through on the vision Elon had helped her develop, but at what cost? A knock at the door broke her reverie, and Jamal stepped in, his expression serious but kind. "You good?" he asked gently, not waiting for her to respond before sitting across from her. Maya let out a long sigh, the tension in her shoulders heavy. "I don't know, Jamal. I don't think I'm cut out for this. It's all going so fast. The vision feels like it's slipping away. I'm losing sight of what we started here." Jamal looked at her for a long moment, his eyes soft. "Maya, listen. You've got to remember why you're doing this. You didn't get here because you wanted to be some big business mogul or to chase success. You got here because you believed in something bigger than yourself. And you've already done more than most people could ever dream of. But I'm not sure I can do more. I can't keep up with all of this. I don't even know who I'm becoming in the process," Maya admitted, her voice cracking. Jamal was quiet for a moment, then stood and walked over to the window, staring out into the darkening city. "I get it. The pressure is intense. But let me ask you something. What are you afraid of losing here? Is it the kids, the mission, or is it your own sense of who you are?" Maya didn't answer immediately, the question sinking deep into her thoughts. The truth was, she was afraid of losing everything. The very thing that had made her feel alive and purposeful, her connection to the community, her authenticity, felt like it was slipping through her fingers. "I don't know who I'm supposed to be anymore, Jamal," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Jamal turned around slowly, his eyes piercing. "Maya, you've always been the same person. You've always known what you stand for. Don't let all this," He gestured toward the piles of papers. Change who you are. You can expand, you can grow, but don't lose sight of the heart of what you're doing. The kids need you to be you. Maya felt a tear slip down her cheek, a mix of frustration, fear, and relief. For the first time in weeks, she felt like someone understood. Jamal softened, taking a seat again. The mission is bigger than the method, Maya. You don't have to compromise your soul to make it work. You just have to find a way to merge the two, your heart and the hustle. It won't be easy, but nothing worth having ever is. Maya nodded, feeling the weight on her chest lighten just a little. She knew Jamal was right. She had gotten into this for one reason only, to give kids like her a chance, to show them a world beyond the one they were born into. And no matter how many meetings, how many numbers, how many plans, that had to stay at the center. I'm scared, Jamal. But I'm not giving up on them, Maya said, her voice firm, the resolve beginning to build again. Jamal smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. I wouldn't expect anything less. The following week, Maya did something she hadn't done in months. She took a step back. Instead of attending the high-powered meetings and answering every call, she spent a full day in one of the community centers. She wanted to reconnect with the people, with the kids who had been her inspiration from the very beginning. Walking through the bustling rooms, the laughter and chatter of the children felt like a balm to her soul. She stopped to talk with a few of them, checking in on their progress, sharing moments of joy. They were excited about their futures, inspired by the changes she had made possible, and it reminded her why this was worth fighting for. As she sat with a group of teens working on a project, one of them, a young girl named Destiny, looked up and caught her eye. Ms. Maya, she said shyly, I just wanted to say, you saved my life. You gave me a place to go when I had nowhere else to turn. You showed me that I can be something more than my circumstances. Maya's heart clenched. The words hit her like a wave, and for a moment, she didn't know how to respond. All she could do was smile, a tear slipping down her cheek. No, Destiny, you did this. You showed me how strong you are. With a newfound sense of purpose, Maya faces a crossroads once again, struggling to balance growth with authenticity. Can she stay true to herself and the mission while navigating the immense pressure surrounding her? The future of her program, and her own future, depends on the decisions she makes next. Maya stood in front of the mirror, staring at the reflection of the woman she had become. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of emotions, self-doubt, frustration, and then, finally, a sense of clarity. She had taken the time to reconnect with the heart of her mission, the reason she had started all this in the first place. Now, it was time to face the next challenge, expanding the program while staying true to the very community she was fighting to uplift. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. It was one thing to bring in investors, to attract the media, to secure funding, but it was something else entirely to maintain the integrity of what she had built. Would the expansion take her away from the roots that had sustained her? Would it turn her into just another corporate executive who forgot where she came from? The sound of her phone ringing broke her thoughts, and she picked it up to see Elon's name flashing on the screen. She hesitated for a moment before answering. Maya, Elon's voice came through, calm yet firm. I've been thinking about our last conversation. I know things have been tough, but I want to remind you that we're not just building a program, we're building a movement. A movement that will change the lives of thousands of kids. I believe in you, Maya, and I believe you can do this. His words settled in her chest like a promise, but the doubts were still there, gnawing at the edges of her mind. I know, Elon. I do. But I can't help but feel like I'm losing myself in all of this. Elon's tone softened. You won't lose yourself, Maya. This is about growing, not forgetting where you came from. You've always been someone who stays grounded. He paused, as if choosing his next words carefully. This is just a bigger platform for your vision. You've got the chance to reach more kids, give them more opportunities. You're not just changing one community anymore, you're changing the world. Maya closed her eyes, letting his words wash over her. He was right. She had always known that what she was doing was bigger than just her, or even the kids she had worked with up until now. It was about breaking down the systems that had kept people like her, like Destiny, trapped in cycles of poverty and discrimination. It was about giving them something real, something tangible. She couldn't walk away from that, no matter how hard it seemed. "I'm scared, Elon," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared of losing everything that matters." Elon's response was gentle, but resolute. "You won't lose anything. You'll just learn how to balance the vision with the reality. You've already proven you can do the impossible. Now it's time to do it on a bigger scale." After a long pause, Maya exhaled, as if the weight of her fears had been lifted just a little. "I'll do it," she said, her voice stronger now, her decision clear. "I'll take the next step, but I need to do it on my own terms." "Of course," Elon replied. "I wouldn't expect anything less." The next few days were a blur of meetings, paperwork, and long hours at her desk. But even as the pressure mounted, Maya found herself moving with more purpose. She had always been a fighter, and now, more than ever, she needed to fight for the future she envisioned, one where children from all backgrounds had a chance to succeed. Jamal had been a rock through all of it, offering advice and encouragement when it felt like the weight of the world was pressing down on her. He reminded her to stay true to her mission and to trust in the team she had built. Together, they worked on refining the plan for the program's expansion, ensuring that the core values remained intact. One evening, as she walked out of her office, Maya stopped in front of a large window overlooking the city. She watched as the lights twinkled in the distance, feeling the pulse of life below her. She had come a long way from the streets, from the girl who had once felt invisible. Now, she was in a position to make a difference, on a much larger scale. But with this power came responsibility. The path ahead was uncertain, and there would be sacrifices. But as she stood there, her heart filled with a quiet determination, Maya knew one thing for sure. She couldn't turn back now. The following morning, as she made her way to the office, she received a call from Destiny. "Ms. Maya?" The voice on the other end sounded hesitant. "Hey, Destiny," Maya replied, her smile reaching her voice. "How's everything going?" There was a long pause before Destiny spoke again, her voice filled with emotion. "I just wanted to say thank you for everything. I don't know where I'd be without you, without this program. You changed my life." Maya's heart swelled with pride. "You're the one who changed your life, Destiny. You did the work. I just gave you a chance to see it." Destiny chuckled, but her voice remained serious. "You don't get it, Ms. Maya. You gave me hope. You made me believe that I can be something. And now I'm going to college. I'm going to be the first in my family to graduate. You made that happen." Tears sprang to Maya's eyes as she listened. This was why she had done it all. The late nights, the struggles, the doubt. Moments like this made it all worth it. "Destiny," Maya said softly, "you're going to do amazing things. I'm proud of you." With a renewed sense of purpose and the love and support of the community she had fought for, Maya prepares to take the leap into expanding her program nationwide. But as she moves forward, she faces new challenges that threaten to derail everything she's worked for. Will her vision be enough to keep her grounded, or will the weight of success pull her under? The stakes have never been higher. Maya's office had never felt more like a battlefield. The walls, once a symbol of inspiration and progress, now seemed to close in on her as she sat at her desk, papers strewn across it in chaotic disarray. She could feel the tension building as she read through the proposals from potential investors, each one promising more money but with strings attached, each one trying to sway her from her original vision. Her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. It was Jamal. "Maya, we need to talk," he said, his voice urgent. "There's a meeting tomorrow with a big investor, one who's been pushing hard to control the direction of the program. I don't know if we can afford to turn him down, but we have to be careful." Maya rubbed her temples. "I know. I've been looking over the contract. The terms are not great. They want a say in how we run everything. But I don't know if we can keep going without this kind of funding." Jamal's voice softened. "I get it. But remember why you started this in the first place. It's not about the money. It's about the kids, the community. If we lose that, we lose everything." Maya exhaled sharply. "You're right. But what if we can't keep the doors open? What if we can't make it work without compromising?" There was a long pause on the other end. "Then we'll find another way. We've come this far, Maya. Don't let fear make this decision for you." Maya sat back in her chair, looking out the window as the city buzzed below. Jamal's words echoed in her mind. She knew he was right, but the weight of responsibility was heavy. She had to make the right choice, one that wouldn't compromise everything she had built. The next day, Maya arrived at the meeting with the investor feeling more anxious than she cared to admit. The sleek glass building of the investor's firm stood tall and imposing, a symbol of the corporate world that she was trying to navigate. She walked through the polished doors, her heels clicking on the marble floors, and was greeted by a man in his late 40s, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. His smile was warm, but there was something in his eyes that felt calculating. "Maya, it's a pleasure to finally meet you in person," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "I've heard a lot of good things about your program. We're excited about the potential here." "Thank you," Maya replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm glad to be here." They walked into the boardroom, where a group of executives sat around a glossy table. The conversation began with pleasantries, but it quickly shifted to the terms of the deal. "We're willing to invest a significant amount of money," the investor began, "but we'd like to see some changes. Specifically, we want a larger role in overseeing the curriculum and the direction of the program." Maya's heart skipped a beat. This was what she had feared. "I understand your interest," she said carefully, "but the integrity of the program is important to me. I want to make sure we're still focused on our mission, serving these kids, not just turning a profit." The investor smiled, though there was a hint of condescension in it. "I'm sure we can come to an agreement. We're just looking for some assurances that the program will be scalable and sustainable. We need to see results." Maya held her ground. "We've already proven that the program works. The results speak for themselves. What I need from you is not just money, but trust. Trust that we know what's best for these kids." There was a flicker of tension in the room. The investor leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers on the table. "I see, but we believe we can offer you something more. Something that will help you grow faster, reach more kids, and make a bigger impact." "I appreciate the offer," Maya said, her voice firm, "but I'm not willing to compromise on the values that made this program what it is." As she left the meeting, Maya's chest felt tight. The investor had made it clear he wasn't interested in working with her unless she was willing to bend. She couldn't help but feel the pressure building. On one hand, the chance to expand the program to more communities, to help more children. On the other, the risk of losing everything she had fought for, everything she had built with so much care. She called Jamal as she stepped out into the street, the weight of the decision pressing on her. "They won't back down," she said, her voice tight. "They want control, and I don't know if I can give that to them." Jamal was quiet for a moment. "Maya, you've always known this wouldn't be easy, but you also know that the kids need you. The program needs you. Don't let one person's vision derail everything." Maya paused, her mind racing. She had always known there would be challenges. The road to success was never easy, but now, more than ever, she had to make the right choice. Would she give in to the pressure, or would she stay true to her original vision? She walked to her car, feeling the weight of the decision settle deeper in her chest. As she slid into the driver's seat, she realized that the stakes were higher than ever. She wasn't just fighting for her program anymore. She was fighting for the future of every child who needed a chance to succeed. Maya faces the hardest decision of her life. Will she compromise her values to secure the funding she needs, or will she risk losing everything to maintain control over her vision? The future of her program, and the kids who rely on it, depends on what she decides next. Maya couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in her chest after the meeting. She hadn't slept, hadn't eaten. The tension gnawed at her from all sides. The weight of the decision pressed down on her like a vice, suffocating her. The investor's words echoed in her ears. "We're looking for results. Scalability, sustainability, and control." She wasn't sure if it was the sting of their demands or the fear of failure that made her feel so hollow. Maybe it was both. The sound of her phone ringing cut through her thoughts. It was Jamal. "Maya, you there?" His voice was heavy, his concern palpable. "I'm here," she said quietly, trying to sound like she had it all together. But she didn't. She was falling apart, piece by piece. "We need to talk," Jamal said, a hint of urgency in his tone. I've been talking to a few of the other staff members. I know you're under a lot of pressure right now, but we can't keep doing this. We need to make a decision. Do we take the money, or do we risk it all? Maya closed her eyes, the sound of Jamal's words feeling like an avalanche, burying her in their weight. She had been running the program for years, built it from the ground up, and now she stood at a crossroads, staring down the sharp edge of a decision that could change everything. I know, she said finally, her voice strained, but if we take the money, we'll lose control. If we turn it down, we risk losing the program altogether. Jamal was silent for a moment. Then he said something that made Maya's heart clench. What about the kids? What about them? If we don't make a choice, they lose either way. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. He was right. The kids, those who had come to her program, desperate for a future, were relying on her. She could feel the weight of their hopes and dreams pressing against her chest, suffocating her. If she didn't act now, she could lose everything. Let me think about it, Maya whispered, her voice shaky. I'll make a decision by the end of the day. The afternoon dragged on. Maya sat at her desk, staring at the contracts in front of her, the offers and terms blurring together into a mess of legalese that made her head spin. The numbers were staggering, millions of dollars that could change the course of her program. But the strings attached to those numbers made her stomach churn. The investor wanted to be in charge. They wanted to dictate every aspect of the program, from the curriculum to the staff. It was everything she had fought against. She stood up, pacing the room. She thought of the kids, the faces of the children who had walked through her doors, desperate for guidance, for a chance. They couldn't be part of a system that didn't have their best interests at heart. But could she risk their futures by turning down the investment? Could she live with herself if the program failed because she was too proud to compromise? Her phone buzzed again, pulling her from her thoughts. This time, it was an email from a local school district. They were interested in partnering with her program, expanding to several more schools. It was an opportunity, a lifeline. Her pulse quickened as she read through the email. This could be the breakthrough she needed. If she could find a way to make it work. She dialed Jamal's number immediately. Jamal, she said, her voice more urgent now. I think I found another way. We don't need the investors' money to grow. We've got the schools interested. We can partner with them and expand without losing control. But it's going to take everything we've got. We'll have to hustle hard. Jamal's response was immediate, relief and excitement flooding his voice. That's amazing, Maya. You've got this. Let's get to work. Maya sat back in her chair, a surge of adrenaline running through her. She had made up her mind. She would fight for the kids. She would protect the program, no matter what. The investors' money wasn't worth the cost of her soul. She would find another way. That night, as she lay in bed, the weight of the decision still heavy on her mind, she found herself replaying Jamal's words. What about the kids? What about them? The answer was clear. The kids were why she had started this in the first place. They were the reason she had risked everything to build this program. They deserved more than just a chance. They deserved a future, and she was going to make sure they got it. Her phone buzzed one last time that night. It was an update from the local school district. One of the principals wanted to meet with her tomorrow to discuss the partnership. As the moonlight streamed through her window, Maya felt a flicker of hope stir inside her. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in days, she felt like maybe, just maybe, it was all going to be okay. Maya has made her choice. She's going to take a bold step forward, risking it all to keep her program intact. But the road ahead is uncertain, and the challenges are just beginning. Will she be able to make the partnership work and expand her program, or will the obstacles prove too great? The morning came too quickly for Maya, her mind still racing with thoughts of the decision she had made. She dressed quickly, the adrenaline from the night before still coursing through her veins, and headed out for the meeting with the school district. She had no idea what to expect, but she knew one thing for certain. This meeting was her shot at taking control of the future. As she arrived at the district office, the grand building seemed to tower over her, its polished glass windows reflecting the bustling city outside. Maya had spent years in this city, but today, this place felt unfamiliar. Her hands trembled slightly as she walked through the door, the weight of her decision hanging over her. She was ushered into a conference room where a group of district officials were already waiting. There were a few familiar faces, principals she'd worked with in the past, but the others were new. The table was set with coffee and papers, and a screen behind them flashed the logo of the district. "Maya, it's good to see you." One of the principals, Mr. Harris, greeted her warmly. "We're excited about the possibility of working together." Maya smiled, but it felt stiff, forced. "I'm excited too. I believe this partnership can help us reach so many more kids. But we have to get this right. We can't just throw a program together. We need something that will actually make a difference." The group nodded in agreement. Maya could see the seriousness in their eyes, the desire to make real change. It was a small glimmer of hope, and it gave her the confidence to move forward. "Let's start by talking about the program," she said, taking a seat at the table. "What do you envision? What do you think our next steps should be?" The room fell into discussion, ideas flying back and forth as Maya listened intently. She'd come prepared, armed with data and research about the success of her program, ready to prove it could work on a larger scale. She knew she had to make them believe in her vision of a future where these kids weren't just statistics but were given the tools to thrive. By the end of the meeting, they had mapped out a plan, a timeline, budgets, and even the first steps for the rollout. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And for Maya, that was enough. She had to take this leap. Walking out of the district office, Maya felt like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. There were still challenges ahead, lots of them, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was on the right path. She was going to make this work. For the kids, for the future. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was Jamal. "Maya, I'm hearing good things," he said. "What's the word?" She couldn't help but smile. "We're in. They're on board. We've got the partnership." The relief in Jamal's voice was palpable. "That's amazing. You did it." Maya felt her throat tighten, the exhaustion and emotional toll of the last few days crashing down on her all at once. "It's not over yet. We still have a lot of work to do." She could feel Jamal smile through the phone. "You've got this. We've got this." Later that evening, as Maya sat at her desk, going over the details of the new partnership, she reflected on how far she had come. A few weeks ago, she had been on the verge of giving up, facing an impossible decision between taking the money and losing control, or risking it all and standing her ground. And now, she had found a way to have it all. But the path ahead would not be easy. She would need to rally the team, secure additional funding, and ensure that the program's values remained intact. But she wasn't alone in this anymore. She had Jamal, the staff, and, most importantly, the kids who believed in her. The next morning, Maya stood in front of her team, ready to share the news. The staff gathered in the main office, the usual hum of activity dying down as they awaited her announcement. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. "We did it," she said, a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "We've secured a partnership with the school district. This is our chance to expand the program and make a real impact on more kids' lives. But it's going to take all of us. Are you with me?" The room erupted in applause, cheers echoing through the office. Maya's heart swelled with pride. These were the people who had believed in her when everything seemed impossible. And now, they were going to take this program to heights they had only dreamed of. As the day went on, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had fought for this. She had risked everything. And now, for the first time, it felt like it was all worth it. But she knew the real challenge was just beginning. The district was just the first step. She would have to prove that this partnership could work, that they could create something lasting. And for that, she would have to be relentless. She would have to fight for the kids, for their futures, no matter what. Maya has secured the partnership, but the real work is just beginning. Will she be able to implement the program on a larger scale and stay true to the mission? The journey ahead is full of obstacles, and Maya will have to dig deep to see it through. The weeks following the partnership announcement were a blur of meetings, paperwork, and phone calls. Maya hardly had time to breathe, let alone reflect on the whirlwind of events that had led her here. The district was on board, and funding was in place, but the heavy weight of responsibility was starting to sink in. Every decision she made now had the potential to affect hundreds of lives. The stakes had never been higher. Her first priority was assembling a team to help execute the new program. She'd already handpicked a few trusted staff members, but now it was time to recruit more. People who shared her vision, who were willing to fight as hard as she was to make this program a success. Maya sat in her office, staring at a list of potential candidates on her computer screen. She was looking for more than just qualifications. She needed people who understood the heart of the mission, who were committed to the long-term impact it would have on the kids. It was hard work. No one who hadn't been through the trenches could understand the unique challenges of working with at-risk youth. But she had learned over the years that those who had struggled themselves often made the best mentors. Her phone buzzed again, breaking her concentration. It was Jamal. "Got a minute?" he asked, his voice laced with urgency. "Of course," Maya replied. "What's up?" "I need to talk to you about something," Jamal said. "Something's come up, and it could affect everything." Maya's stomach dropped. "What's going on?" Jamal hesitated before speaking. "There's a group of parents at one of the schools who are against the program. They don't think it's a good fit for their kids. They're calling it a distraction, and some of them want to pull their children out of the program." Maya's mind raced. She had known there would be opposition, but hearing it so directly hit harder than she expected. "Do we know why they're against it?" Jamal's voice grew tense. "It's mostly about the kids we're targeting. These parents believe that if their kids get involved with the program, it'll be a bad influence on them. They don't want their kids associating with kids from troubled backgrounds." Maya gripped the edge of her desk, her frustration bubbling up. She had expected resistance, but this felt personal. These parents weren't seeing the potential for change. They were seeing the program as a threat to their own children's futures. It was discrimination, pure and simple. "I'll handle it," Maya said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "We're not backing down. I'll arrange a meeting with the parents. We'll clear up any misconceptions." The meeting was set for the following week, and Maya spent the next several days preparing. She couldn't afford to lose this battle, not now. If she could change just one parent's mind, it could make all the difference. So she dug into the data, reviewing success stories and statistics, crafting her argument with precision. On the day of the meeting, Maya arrived early, her heart pounding in her chest. She was met with a small group of parents, most of them skeptical, some outright hostile. They were seated around a long table, arms crossed, faces filled with distrust. Maya felt the weight of their judgment, but she didn't let it faze her. She took a deep breath and began. "I know that you care deeply about your children's education and future," she began, her voice firm but compassionate. "And I understand why you might have concerns about this program. It's new, it's different, and it's not what you're used to. But I want to be clear. This program isn't about changing your kids or taking away their opportunities. It's about giving kids who have been overlooked, who have been left behind, a chance to succeed." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each parent. These are kids who are struggling, yes, but they're not defined by their struggles. They're capable of so much more than most people give them credit for. All they need is someone to believe in them. This program is about providing that support. It's about helping kids who have no other options. And if we can work together, we can make sure that every child, regardless of their background, gets the chance they deserve. There was a long silence. Maya could feel the tension in the room, the walls of resistance beginning to crack, but she wasn't done. She needed them to see the bigger picture. "I know you want what's best for your kids," she continued, "and I'm here to tell you that this program can help make their futures brighter. It's not about separating kids based on their background. It's about creating an environment where everyone, no matter their circumstances, can grow and thrive together." One of the mothers spoke up, her voice quiet but firm. "But what if it's too much? What if it's a distraction?" Maya shook her head. "It's not a distraction. It's a lifeline. These kids aren't a threat to your kids. They're a chance to show them what resilience looks like. Your kids can learn just as much from helping others as they can from a textbook." The conversation shifted after that, the tension gradually dissolving as Maya continued to speak with conviction. By the end of the meeting, while not everyone was fully convinced, a few parents had softened their stance. Maya knew she hadn't won the battle yet, but she had planted the seed. And that, she thought, was all she could do. As Maya left the meeting, She felt a sense of accomplishment. The road ahead was still uncertain, and the challenges would only increase. But she wasn't about to give up. She had fought for these kids, and she would continue to fight for them, no matter what. That evening, as she sat down at her desk to catch up on emails, Maya's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Jamal. "We've got a long way to go, but you're doing it, Maya. You're changing lives." Maya smiled. For the first time in a while, she allowed herself to feel a flicker of hope. Maya's work is far from over. With opposition from some parents and a program still in its early stages, will she be able to keep the momentum going? The battle for the future of these kids is just beginning, and Maya will need all her strength, determination, and passion to see it through. The following weeks were a blur of progress and setbacks. Maya spent countless hours fine-tuning the program, meeting with community leaders, and reaching out to local businesses for support. The response was mixed, but with each passing day, she felt the weight of her mission grow heavier. She was up against a deeply entrenched system, and it wasn't going to be easy to dismantle. But Maya wasn't one to back down. She had been underestimated her whole life, and now, with everything on the line, she felt the fire inside her intensify. She wasn't just fighting for a program. She was fighting for these kids' futures. It was late one evening when Maya received an unexpected phone call. The name on the screen was unfamiliar, but the voice that greeted her was clear and authoritative. "Ms. Carter," the voice said, "this is Detective Roberts from the police department. I hope I'm not disturbing you." Maya sat up straighter, instantly on alert. "No, it's fine. How can I help you, Detective?" "I'm calling because of the recent pushback against the program you're running," Detective Roberts said. "I've been hearing some troubling things from people in the community, and I wanted to reach out to you personally to offer my support." Maya blinked in surprise. "Support? From the police? I'm afraid I don't understand," she said cautiously. Detective Roberts chuckled softly. "I understand your hesitation. Trust me, I know what it's like to face resistance. I've been a cop in this neighborhood for over a decade, and I've seen the struggles firsthand. This program of yours? It's exactly what our kids need. Too many of them are falling through the cracks." Maya was taken aback. She had been expecting pushback from all sides, especially from law enforcement. But this was different. "You're saying you support what we're doing?" she asked, still skeptical. "Yes, absolutely. And not just me. There are others in the department who believe in what you're trying to accomplish. We see the same kids every day. Kids who are stuck in cycles of crime, poverty, and violence. What you're doing could break that cycle. We want to help." Maya felt a weight lift off her shoulders, though she still couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. She had always assumed the police were a barrier, not an ally. That's good to hear," she said cautiously. "But I'm going to need more than just words. If we're going to make this work, I need real action, real support." "I understand," Detective Roberts said, "and we're prepared to offer it. We've already had discussions with the schools and some community centers. We'll help with resources, mentors, job opportunities, even law enforcement officers who can serve as positive role models." Maya's heart pounded in her chest. This was the break she'd been waiting for. A real ally, someone with influence, someone who could make things happen. But she needed to be sure this wasn't just empty promises. "I appreciate that," she said, keeping her voice steady. "But I need you to understand that this program isn't just about resources. It's about trust, relationships, and showing these kids that there's more to life than what they see on the streets. If we're going to get through to them, we can't just swoop in with a handout. We need people who can walk with them, day in and day out." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and when Robert spoke again, his voice was resolute. "We get it," he said. "We're in this for the long haul. This isn't a quick fix, and we know that. But we're ready to do the work." Maya allowed herself to breathe, just for a moment. She had just secured a partnership that could change everything. But there was still so much to do, so much more ground to cover. "Thank you, Detective," she said. "This means more than you know. I'll be in touch to discuss next steps." After the call, Maya sat back in her chair, her thoughts racing. She had just gained a powerful ally, but she knew the battle was far from over. She couldn't afford to get complacent now. She needed to move quickly, keep the momentum going, and make sure this partnership didn't fizzle out. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Jamal. "You won't believe this," the message read. "We just got an endorsement from a local business leader. The program's starting to gain traction, Maya." A smile tugged at her lips. Every small victory felt like a step closer to something bigger. She was on the right path, even if the road ahead was long. The next day, Maya met with her team to discuss the new developments. They were all buzzing with excitement, eager to get started on implementing the next phase of the program. Maya felt a spark of hope flicker inside her. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. But she couldn't forget the parents who were still opposed, the community members who would always doubt her vision. They were the ones who didn't understand what she was trying to do. But Maya wasn't about to give up now, not with everything she had worked for hanging in the balance. "All right, team," she said, her voice steady. "We've got our work cut out for us. But I know we can do this. Let's go make some change." Maya has secured an unexpected ally in the form of law enforcement, but with resistance still brewing in the community, the battle is far from won. Will she be able to bridge the gap and gain the trust of those who remain skeptical? The next phase of the program depends on her ability to unite a fractured community and show everyone that real change is possible. Maya stood in front of the crowded community center, her heart pounding as she prepared to speak. It was a pivotal moment, one she had been anticipating for weeks. She had secured support from local law enforcement, business leaders, and now it was time to face the community that had been the most resistant to her program. The room buzzed with murmurs. People sat in folding chairs, eyeing her warily. It wasn't lost on her that many of them were skeptical, some even outright hostile. This wasn't just a gathering about a youth program. It was about confronting fears, prejudices, and long-standing divisions. "Good evening, everyone," Maya began, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "Thank you for taking the time to come here today. I know many of you have concerns about the work we're doing with at-risk youth, and I'm here to address them head-on." There was a long pause as the crowd waited for her to continue. She could feel the weight of their eyes on her, some of them filled with doubt, others with quiet anger. "This program is not about handing out freebies," she said, her voice strong now. "It's about giving our kids a chance to see beyond the streets, beyond the systems that have failed them for far too long. We're not offering a quick fix. We're offering hope, a future where they can be more than what they're told they are." A man in the back of the room stood up, his arms crossed. His face was hard, and his tone was skeptical when he spoke. "And you think some after-school program is going to change all that? These kids don't want your help. They want money, they want power, they want out. You can't fix that with a few classes and a couple of good intentions." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had anticipated this sort of reaction, but hearing it aloud still stung. She took a deep breath, then spoke from the heart. "Maybe you're right," she said, her voice softer now. "Some of these kids have been told they'll never amount to anything. They've seen their families torn apart, and they've been given nothing but struggle and rejection. But I refuse to believe that's the end of their story. I know because I've seen it before. I've seen people rise above their circumstances, against all odds, and make something better for themselves. And that's what I'm offering, an opportunity. That's all." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. She could see some of the faces softening, a few nodding as if they were beginning to understand what she was trying to say. Just as Maya was about to continue, another voice broke through the silence, this time, from the front of the room. "I think what Maya is saying is true," Detective Roberts said, stepping forward. "I've been in this community for years. I've seen the same kids in and out of juvenile detention, arrested for the same petty crimes, over and over. What Maya is trying to do is give them something to believe in, something that doesn't involve running from the law or joining a gang." Maya turned to see Detective Roberts standing by her side, his posture confident and assured. His support had been crucial in winning over some of the more conservative community members, and his presence now felt like a lifeline. "I know it's hard to trust a system that's let you down before," Roberts continued. "But this isn't about the system we've known. This is about the future we can create together. And I'm here to tell you, there are people in law enforcement who are committed to making that future a reality." For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the man in the back of the room who had spoken earlier stood again, but this time, his voice was quieter. I've seen what happens when kids don't have a chance, he said, his tone softer, more contemplative. I've lost family to it. I don't want to see more kids end up like that. Maya nodded, her eyes meeting his with understanding. Exactly. That's why we have to keep trying. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how many times we fail, we can't stop trying. Because if we do, then we're letting them down. There was a long pause before another voice spoke up, this time from the side of the room. A woman who had been sitting quietly until now. I have a son, she said, her voice trembling slightly. He's in high school, and he's been getting into trouble lately. I don't know what to do. I'm scared for him. I want to believe this program can help him, but I'm afraid it won't be enough. Maya's heart went out to her. She could hear the fear in her voice, the fear of losing her son to the streets, to the system. She stepped forward, her voice filled with empathy. It's not just about the program, Maya said gently. It's about us coming together as a community. We need to support each other, to be there for our kids, to show them that they matter. I know it's hard, but together, we can do this. We just need to give it a chance. The room was still for a long moment. Then, one by one, people began to nod. Maya's heart raced as she realized that for the first time, she was starting to see a shift, a real change in how people were thinking about the program. Later that evening, as the meeting broke up, Maya walked out into the cool night air, feeling a sense of cautious optimism. The road ahead would still be difficult. There would be more challenges, more resistance, and more doubts. But tonight, something had shifted. The community was beginning to see the program not as a quick fix, but as a real chance to make a difference. As she walked to her car, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Jamal. We did it, his message read. The first school board meeting is scheduled for next week. They're ready to approve the program. Maya smiled. It was a small victory, but it was one step closer to the bigger dream she had been working toward. She wasn't just changing lives, she was changing the narrative. The community's resistance is beginning to waver, but Maya knows the real test is still ahead. The program is about to be reviewed by the school board, but will the community's newfound support be enough to win them over? As Maya moves closer to achieving her goal, the stakes get higher, and the future of these kids is still on the line. The morning of the school board meeting arrived, and Maya couldn't shake the nervous energy that buzzed through her. Today was the day that could determine the future of the youth program, the moment when all the hard work, the long hours of persuasion, and the tireless efforts to build community trust would either pay off or fall apart. She arrived at the school district's administration building early, the cool autumn breeze brushing against her face as she walked through the doors. Inside, a hum of activity filled the air. Administrators and board members shuffled papers, set up microphones, and arranged chairs in the meeting hall. Maya's heart pounded in her chest as she stood in the hallway, waiting for the doors to open. She wasn't alone. Jamal stood by her side, his usual calm demeanor barely masking the tension in his posture. He was here as her support, the one person who had believed in the program from the beginning. And now, they were both about to face the toughest battle yet. This is it, huh? Jamal said quietly, adjusting his jacket. Big day. Maya nodded, her throat dry. Yeah, but I know this is worth it. We've got the community behind us, the police backing us. Now we just need the board to see what we're trying to do. Jamal gave her a reassuring smile. They'll see it. They can't ignore what you've built. Just keep your head in the game. The doors to the meeting room finally opened, and the pair walked in. The school board members were already seated at a long table, the lights above casting a cold, sterile glow over the room. The air was tense with anticipation as Maya and Jamal took their seats at the table in front of the board, where they would present their case. A stern-looking woman, the head of the school board, cleared her throat and adjusted her glasses as she called the meeting to order. Thank you for joining us today, she said in a clipped tone. We're here to discuss the proposed youth outreach program spearheaded by Ms. Maya Brooks. Let's begin with your presentation. Maya stood up, her hands trembling slightly as she pulled out her notes. She'd prepared for this moment for weeks, rehearsing her speech over and over. But now, in the face of the school board's scrutiny, every word seemed heavier than before. She took a deep breath, steadying herself before speaking. Thank you, Chairwoman Carter, Maya began, her voice strong despite the weight in her chest. As you know, this program is designed to help at-risk youth in our community, kids who are often overlooked, neglected, or pushed to the margins. It's not about giving them a free pass. It's about giving them opportunities, a chance to break the cycle of poverty, crime, and despair that many of them have been born into. She paused, scanning the room. Board members leaned forward slightly, some nodding, others watching her closely with crossed arms. This was a critical moment. Maya knew she had to speak to their concerns, both the real and the imagined. The program isn't just about after-school activities, Maya continued. It's about mentorship, education, and most importantly, showing these kids that their lives have value. We're offering real job training, life skills development, and counseling services. We're also working closely with local law enforcement and businesses to ensure that these young people are given a fighting chance. The goal is not just to keep them out of trouble, it's to help them build a future. She let her words sink in for a moment before addressing the board directly. I know some of you have concerns about how this program will impact the school system, Maya said, but we've already seen results. Kids who were at risk of dropping out are staying in school. Youth who were heading down dangerous paths are now getting jobs, learning trades, and staying out of trouble. This isn't just a pipe dream. It's happening. There was a pause, and then one of the board members, a man in his mid-50s with salt and pepper hair, leaned forward. Ms. Brooks, he said in a clipped tone, I've heard about this program. I've heard the success stories, but let's be honest. You're asking us to invest a significant amount of money in this. What guarantees do we have that this program will work in the long run? What makes this different from all the other failed initiatives we've seen in the past? The question landed with a thud. Maya's heart raced, but she didn't let the doubt show on her face. She had anticipated this. We've learned from the mistakes of past programs, Maya responded. We're not just handing out charity. We're building a framework for success that's sustainable. We're partnering with local businesses, educational institutions, and law enforcement to ensure that we have the support needed to make this work. And most importantly, we're listening to the kids. They are the ones driving this change, not us. We're simply providing the tools. Jamal stepped forward, his calm voice cutting through the tension. And we're already seeing results. These kids are turning their lives around. If we can give them a chance, if we can provide the support, we'll see a ripple effect. It'll be more than just a program. It'll be a movement. The room grew still, the weight of their words settling in the air. But then, a different voice spoke up. A woman on the board, who had been silent until now, cleared her throat. I've seen firsthand the challenges facing our youth, she said. I have a son in high school, and I've watched him struggle. I don't want him to become another statistic. If this program can offer him something better, then it's worth supporting. Maya's heart swelled with hope. The community was starting to come together. This wasn't just her fight anymore. It was their fight. I agree, another board member said. We can't afford to keep ignoring these kids. If this program can help, we should be backing it. But we need to be sure it's going to work. What's the next step? Maya smiled. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The moment when the tide was turning. We'll be launching a pilot program in the next 2 months, she said, her voice filled with conviction. We'll start small, focus on a handful of students, and track their progress. We'll refine the program as we go, but I'm confident it will work. There was a pause as the board members exchanged glances. Then, Chairwoman Carter nodded, signaling that the discussion was over. We'll take this under consideration and vote in the next session, she said. Maya and Jamal exchanged a look of cautious optimism. They had made it this far, and now all they could do was wait. But Maya had a feeling that, no matter what, this was just the beginning. The vote was still to come, but the tide was turning in their favor. Maya knew that even if the school board voted in her favor, the real challenge would be ensuring that the program could continue to thrive. The battle wasn't over, but they were one step closer to making the future brighter for the kids who needed it most. Would the board approve the program, or would the obstacles prove too much to overcome? The wait was agonizing. Maya had spent the next few days replaying the school board meeting over and over in her mind, analyzing every moment, every word. The vote was scheduled for the following week, and the tension between hope and uncertainty gnawed at her. She had fought for this. Fought not just for the kids, but for the future of her community. But as the clock ticked closer to the day of the vote, she couldn't shake the fear that all her efforts might amount to nothing. Jamal, ever the steady presence, had been there to support her through every twist and turn. But even he couldn't hide the unease he felt. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice calm but knowing. Maya looked out the window of her apartment, watching the cars pass by, their lights casting long shadows against the pavement. The city was buzzing with life, but her mind was elsewhere, still locked in that boardroom, still facing the unspoken doubts of the school board members. Would they truly back her vision? Or would they crumble under the weight of the city's expectations? "I don't know if you ever get fully ready for something like this," Maya said quietly, running a hand through her hair. "But we've done everything we could. Now, we just have to wait and see." Jamal gave a small nod. "You've done everything right. You've made your case. Now, it's in their hands. But whatever happens, you've already shown these kids that someone cares. And that alone is a victory." Maya smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. The battle was only half over. Winning the vote was only the first step in a long journey. She knew that if they succeeded, the real work would begin. But as the days passed, the weight of the decision was too much for her to bear alone. She started hearing whispers from the community, news of the board's deliberations and concerns. Some board members were still on the fence, unsure if the program was the right investment. Others, like the woman who had spoken at the meeting, had become vocal supporters, rallying others to join the cause. Despite the growing momentum, Maya still wasn't certain if it would be enough. The night before the vote, Maya stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection. She had never felt more torn, more unsure of her next steps. The future of the kids in her program hung in the balance, and she couldn't help but feel the weight of their hopes and dreams on her shoulders. Her phone buzzed, breaking her from her thoughts. It was a message from her grandmother, a steady voice of wisdom in her life. "Whatever happens, know this. You've already changed lives. You've inspired people. That's what matters." Maya stared at the words, a lump rising in her throat. She had spent so much time thinking about what the board would decide, but her grandmother was right. She had already started the change, and nothing could take that away. The day of the vote arrived, and Maya stood in front of the school board once more. This time, the room felt different. The weight of the room was heavier, the anticipation palpable in the air. The community had gathered in full force. Parents, students, local leaders, and activists, all sitting together, united by the cause Maya had set in motion. The message was clear. This was not just a proposal. It was a movement. Chairwoman Carter called the meeting to order, and the room fell into an anxious silence. Maya's heart raced in her chest. She stood at the front of the room, hands clasped tightly together, waiting for the vote that could change everything. "We've heard all the arguments," Chairwoman Carter said, her voice firm. "We've heard the successes of the pilot program and the challenges it has faced. We've listened to the community, and now it is time to make a decision. All in favor of approving the youth outreach program as proposed by Ms. Maya Brooks." Maya held her breath as hands slowly lifted. 1, 2, 3. She counted the votes as they came in. Each hand raised a small victory, a reminder of how far they had come. The weight of those hands lifting seemed to stretch time, but soon there were enough to reach the critical majority. "And those opposed?" Chairwoman Carter asked, her voice softer. The room was still. No hands were raised. Maya could hardly believe it. She had been waiting for this moment for so long, but it felt surreal. Her vision was finally becoming reality. The chairwoman cleared her throat. "The motion passes. The youth outreach program will be fully funded and implemented in the coming months." A cheer erupted from the back of the room, a roar of support that seemed to shake the very walls. Maya's legs gave out from under her, and for a moment, she was overwhelmed with emotion. She turned to Jamal, who was grinning from ear to ear. Tears blurred her vision as she tried to speak, but no words came. "We did it," Jamal whispered, pulling her into a tight embrace. Maya couldn't find the words. She had fought so hard to make this happen, and now it was finally real. The kids would have the chance they deserved. The future would look a little brighter today because of what they had all built together. As the room continued to buzz with excitement, Maya knew this was only the beginning. The vote had passed, but there was still so much work ahead. The program's success depended on the continued dedication of the community, the schools, and law enforcement. Would they all remain united in their mission to change lives? Or would new challenges emerge to test their resolve? The journey was far from over, but Maya was ready to face whatever came next. The following days felt like a whirlwind. The news of the vote's success spread through the community like wildfire. Maya's phone never stopped ringing with messages of congratulations, offers of support, and promises to help push the program forward. It felt like the weight of the world had shifted, just a little, in her favor. But amid the celebration, a quiet voice inside her reminded her that the hardest part was yet to come. Passing the vote was just the beginning. The real work, the long-term effort to make sure the program succeeded, was where the true challenge lay. Maya sat at her kitchen table, sorting through a stack of papers, planning the next steps. The program had received funding, but there were still so many pieces to put into place. She needed to hire more staff, coordinate with the schools, and figure out the logistics of getting the students into safe spaces for their after-school programs. Then, there were the community partnerships to solidify. It was overwhelming, but she wasn't going to back down now. Jamal had been by her side every step of the way, offering his expertise and calm demeanor whenever she felt like the weight of the world might crush her. "You're doing great," he said one afternoon as they sat together, looking over plans for the upcoming community meeting. "It's a lot, but you're not alone in this." Maya smiled, but it was strained. "It's not the kind of change I can make on my own. I need the whole community to stay behind this. They voted for it, but now I have to prove it was worth it." "That's why you've got the community behind you," Jamal said. "And you've got the support of people who believe in this just as much as you do." Maya nodded, but the nagging feeling didn't go away. She knew that even with all the momentum they had built, there were still obstacles on the horizon. The most powerful people in the city had yet to fully throw their weight behind her. Some of them still held back, uncertain if the program would succeed or even if it was truly necessary. Maya couldn't afford to be complacent now. She had to prove to everyone, not just the kids, that this was worth the investment. The next week, Maya stood in front of a packed community center, the air buzzing with anticipation. It was the first public meeting about the youth outreach program since the vote. Parents, students, and community leaders had come together to hear what was next. Maya could feel their eyes on her as she stepped up to the microphone, the weight of their expectations settling on her shoulders. "This is our chance to prove to our kids that we believe in them," she said, her voice steady despite the butterflies fluttering in her stomach. "This program is about more than just after-school activities. It's about creating a future where they have real opportunities to thrive, where they know they are seen and heard. This is the first step, but we can't stop here." The room was quiet for a moment before a ripple of applause spread through the crowd. Maya felt her heart swell, a sense of pride filling her chest. The room was full of people who were ready to invest in the future of their children. "I know there's still a lot of work to do," Maya continued, her gaze sweeping across the crowd. "But we are in this together. This is about our collective future. And I promise you, we will make it work." When the meeting ended, Maya found herself surrounded by parents offering their help, students eager to get involved, and community leaders promising to spread the word. She felt the weight of her responsibility more than ever, but this time, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a shared mission. But not everyone was so enthusiastic. Maya was walking out to her car when she was approached by someone she hadn't seen in weeks. Mayor Williams, the man whose initial support had been uncertain. He was a tall, imposing figure with a reputation for keeping his distance from projects like hers. He greeted her with a firm handshake, his expression unreadable. "I'm glad to see the community rallying around your program," he said, his tone polite but cool. "It's good to see the city come together for a cause like this." Maya nodded. "It's a huge step forward. We just need to keep that momentum going." The mayor's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm not so sure about that. You've got support now, but the real challenge is convincing people who control the purse strings. They're not going to hand over the kind of money this program needs without more convincing." Maya felt her heart sink, but she refused to show it. She had expected this. The mayor had always been cautious, playing it safe. But this was her fight, and she wasn't about to back down. "I'll do whatever it takes," Maya said firmly. "But this isn't just about the money. It's about saving lives." The mayor's eyes narrowed slightly, his expression shifting. For a moment, he seemed to consider her words before he spoke again. "Just make sure you're ready," he said, his voice suddenly hard. "This city is full of people who'll say they're behind you. But the real test is whether they'll be there when things get tough." Maya stood still for a moment, feeling the weight of his words. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she had come this far. She wasn't going to let anything, or anyone, derail her mission now. As she watched the mayor walk away, Maya felt a renewed sense of determination. She had the support of the community. She had a plan. And most importantly, she had the will to see it through. Maya knew she couldn't let her guard down. The mayor's words echoed in her mind. The real test is whether they'll be there when things get tough. The community had rallied behind her, but now she needed to make sure the people with real power understood the stakes. As the program gained momentum, more opposition would surely arise. Would she be able to unite everyone for the long-term fight, or would the challenges ahead tear them apart? The answer was still unknown, but Maya was ready to face whatever came next. The following weeks were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and planning sessions. Maya felt like she was constantly on the move, organizing the staff, coordinating with local businesses to provide mentorship programs, and working with schools to ensure the outreach program reached the students who needed it most. Despite the mounting pressure, there was a fire in her that kept her going, a drive she couldn't ignore. But it wasn't just the logistical challenges that kept her up at night. It was the doubt, the whispers of opposition that had begun to surface. People were starting to question if the program would really make a difference, if the money invested would be worth the long-term commitment. The mayor's warning echoed in her mind. They're not going to hand over the kind of money this program needs without more convincing. Maya wasn't just fighting for the future of the program. She was fighting for her belief in what could be. The world was full of cynicism, but she wasn't about to let it pull her down. The kids she had met, the ones who were hungry for change, who had dreams bigger than their circumstances, were what kept her moving forward. They were the reason she could never stop. One afternoon, as she was reviewing a proposal for new community partnerships, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. She glanced at the screen. Jamal's name lit up. He had been her steady rock through this entire journey, but this time, she could hear the urgency in his voice when he picked up. "Maya, we need to talk," he said, his tone serious. Her heart skipped a beat. "What's going on?" "It's about the meeting tomorrow with the city council," Jamal said. "There's a group of business leaders who've been speaking out against the funding for the program. They're planning to show up tomorrow and challenge the allocation." Maya's stomach clenched. She had expected opposition, but hearing it so clearly made the reality hit harder than she had anticipated. "Are they the ones with the money?" Maya asked, her voice tight. Jamal paused for a moment before responding. "Yes, and they've got the mayor's ear. If they speak against the program tomorrow, it could mean the difference between success and failure." Maya closed her eyes, taking a slow, steadying breath. She had fought too hard to let it slip away now. "What can we do?" "I think we need to show them what this is really about. If we let them speak without showing them the real impact of this program, they'll see it as just another charity. But it's not that. It's an investment." Maya could hear the determination in Jamal's voice, and it fueled her resolve. "I'll be there. We'll show them what we're doing, and we'll make them see how much this is needed. This isn't just a handout. It's the future of our kids." They discussed the details of the meeting, what they needed to present, who would speak, and how they could frame the program as an investment in the city's long-term success. By the time they hung up, Maya had a new sense of purpose. It wasn't just about the kids anymore. It was about proving to the city that this program wasn't a gamble, it was a necessity. The next day, the city council chamber was packed with people. Business leaders sat at the front, their eyes focused on the podium where Maya stood, her hands clasped together as she spoke. Behind her, the team of volunteers and educators who had worked tirelessly to build the program stood in solidarity. They were a living testament to the power of community action. "We've all heard the arguments," Maya began, her voice unwavering as she addressed the council. Some say that this program isn't necessary, that it's too risky. But I'm here to tell you that this program isn't a gamble. It's an investment in our future. It's an investment in the kids who've been left behind for far too long. She paused for a moment, scanning the room. The business leaders were seated, their arms crossed, eyes skeptical. But she wasn't backing down. These are kids who want to learn, who want to grow, who want to be seen, she continued. And I know that because I've met them. I've seen their eyes light up when they realize that someone believes in them. This program is more than just after-school tutoring. It's about providing mentorship, skills, and a path forward. The room was silent as Maya spoke, and for the first time, she felt the power of her words sinking in. But there was still a hard edge to the atmosphere. The business leaders were still skeptical. And yes, we need funding, she said, her voice steady. But it's not just about money. It's about showing these kids that we believe in them, that we care enough to give them the tools to succeed, and that investment will pay off in ways that we can't even measure yet. As she finished speaking, there was a long pause. The tension in the room was thick. And then, to her surprise, one of the business leaders, Mr. Turner, the owner of a major tech company in the city, stood up. His expression was thoughtful, almost curious. "I've been listening to you," Mr. Turner said, his voice echoing in the quiet room. "And I can see that this program means a lot to you. Maybe more than I thought it would. So, I'll say this. We're willing to commit. Not just for 1 year, but for 5. If this is as good as you say, we want to be a part of it." Maya's heart skipped a beat, and she struggled to hold back tears. The city was starting to believe in her vision. The business leaders weren't just writing a check. They were investing in the future of the community. As the room erupted into applause, Maya felt the weight of all the sacrifices, all the sleepless nights, and all the doubts that had tried to hold her back melt away. She had fought for this moment, and now the future was within reach. The battle for the program had been won, but the real work was just beginning. Maya knew that this was only the start of something bigger. She had the resources, the support, and the drive to make it a success. But the question remained. Would she be able to maintain this momentum and see the program through to its ultimate goal? The challenges ahead were many, but for the first time in a long while, Maya felt like anything was possible.